So again, it's the middle of July, and it's a hot day here. It's about 99 degrees as we stand here in the sun, and about 36% humidity. So it's kind of good to know what you're dealing with, really. And in the second half of the growing season now, I'm going to try to do some different things, try to be creative, start replanting too, and so on. So, and sometimes you can use some things that you don't usually think about using in the garden. For instance, soda. So why would you use soda in the garden? Well, the thing about soda is it's actually very acidic. I'm not sure what the pH level of soda is, but it's probably about 3 or something like that. And some vegetables, not too many, but some vegetables like to have a more acidic soil. So particularly potatoes. My potatoes have not done really well here. So I'm trying to make the soil more acidic and hope they will do better. So I'm mixing about a cup of this in a gallon of water and using that on my potatoes. I've been doing that for a couple of weeks now, and they actually seem like they're doing better. So soda can be a very, very useful thing in the garden. Another thing is old fabric. So this is a piece of an old pillowcase made out of cotton. So cotton, of course, is a natural material, and you can actually compost cotton. I think things like this also have a good use in the garden, for me anyway. I have 96 of the small beds growing things like eggplant and tomatoes and squash and so on. So what I'm going to be doing now is actually covering up the that bed, except of course where the plant or two are coming up, with hopefully as much of this kind of thing as I can find. And I think that will tamp down the weeds completely, help the moisture stay in the soil. And I think it'll save me a lot of time and effort in this kind of heat. If I don't have enough of that, I'm actually going to use this. This is burlap, and it's a very inexpensive material. It's made out of jute, and of course you want to get burlap also that is completely natural, because burlap also will decompose after a while, and this can be used again to cover up those small plots. The other thing I'm using burlap for is when I start to replant, when some of these old beds with lettuces start to go to seed and they become overgrown. I'm going to pull them out. I'm going to actually leave them at the bottom of the bed, and I'm going to put some soil on top of them. I'm going to plant some new lettuces or kale or whatever using my seed planter, and then I'm going to cover it with burlap, so that on a day like today, when it's really hot, when it gets really dry, the seeds will actually have a chance to germinate. This will help keep them moist and keep the soil from heating up too much. So I'm hoping that it will really help the seeds germinate. I'll leave the burlap covering those seed beds for a week or 10 days, and maybe even use it as kind of a tent over the seeds after they start to sprout. So that's cotton and burlap. And then one of the big problems with especially squash, but also cucumbers and so on, is that after a while, especially in a climate like this, you start to get powdery mildew on the leaves. It shows up like this, and very often it won't kill the plant, but it really slows it down. It's hard to get rid of, and I have to think about what I'm going to do about this for the next few months. One of the things that's talked about using is neem oil. It's a natural product. You dilute it and spray it on the plants. But a container like this costs about $20, so it's a fairly expensive remedy. You can also use like a copper fungicide, but also that can get to be very expensive, and it's not organic. So what I'm going to use is something I ordered from nuts.com, and this is potassium bicarbonate. So potassium bicarbonate is usually a food supplement, helps people get more potassium into their system, into their diet. But apparently it also, if diluted in water and sprayed on plants, will really control the powdery mildew. So haven't tried it yet, but I'm going to try it and I hope it works. So we will see what happens with that. But it's much less expensive to buy this and dilute it in water, and I'm going to spray it on my squash plants because I'm heavily invested in squash in the garden. So we're going to try to use that. Something else that maybe I've used before and might try again is some really smelly bar soap. So we have some rabbits around here, and sometimes some other creatures, and they try to get into the garden and eat some of what's in the garden. I have it fairly well fenced, but not perfectly. So, as you know, a lot of animals have very keen senses of smell, and a lot of them do not like the smell of this kind of soap. So I'm going to actually just spread this around the perimeter of the garden and hope it keeps some of those creatures away, and they won't get in and eat some of my vegetables in there. I've had them eat in the past the green beans. One year they got my turnip tops, my carrot tops. So I'm trying to prevent them from getting into the garden and eating all my vegetables. One other thing that I have a lot of around the house sometimes that I don't know quite what to do with is these hangers that you get from the dry cleaners or something, and they won't take it in recycling or anything, so I need to find out what I'm going to do with these hangers. Some of my squash plants in particular, the spaghetti squash, are really great climbers and spreaders. So as you can see from the garden, some of my spreading plants are actually growing over the edge of the garden. My cucumbers are coming through the fence. Some of my squash plants are going through the fence on the other side. And I've got spaghetti squash that doesn't have quite room enough to grow. So I'm making a little grate or grill for these, suspended up beside them out of coat hangers. And I'm hoping that the spaghetti squash will actually climb up those coat hangers, and it will keep them out of the other plants. So I'm trying to use all these things for good purposes in the garden.